The 21.3 patch releasing tomorrow includes several updates across Standard, Wild, Battlegrounds, Duels, and Arena. Standard and Wild updates. I mean, I'm interested in the Standard ones. I don't really play Wild. The following cards have been adjusted down in power level. Irebound Brute, old cost 7, new cost 8. Irebound Brute was playable a bit earlier than intended on average, pushing it up a turn. Pushing it back a mana a turn, whatever. It should soften extreme turn. That makes a lot of sense. I was saying it on stream beforehand that when I saw that it was Demon Hunter nerfs. I don't think that any other part of Demon Hunter is particularly oppressive. I think other parts of Demon Hunter are good, but I think the only thing that feels like really inherently like unfair and like there's very little counterplay to it is when you have the absolute nut draw with Irebound Brutes, and I think that it's a very fair card at 8 mana still. Like, I think that the deck probably is gonna stay something close to 30 out of 30 that it is now, but gonna be a bit more fair. I think that the A deck is still going to be okay for sure. Next one, the big one, Mindrender Illucia, aka the Witch, aka the reason for my despair for the last year, aka burn her to the ground. Yeah, that's her nickname now. Battle Cry, swap hands and decks with your opponents until end of turn, or until your next turn. New Battle Cry, replace your hand with a copy of your opponent's until end of turn. This is you can't see it, but mwah. Damn, I'll kiss the mic for that. Mwah. That's how I feel really good about this. So basically what it means is that sure, I mean, what they can still, like, they get a copy of your hand, so they can still play your cards, but they don't use them for you. Like, you still keep the cards in your hand completely. They never destroy your hand anymore. And the same token, you can't destroy theirs, which was kind of the game that it created, but thank God. I mean, it can still do some of the stuff. Like, if you are holding Il'gynoth, 2 Morgs, a Guild Trader, and a Fellscream Blast, they can still take that and kill you. I think I'd be very surprised. At least maybe Shadow Priest is still intact, but they're taking like one of the most powerful, like, or the most powerful tool of that deck and killing it. Dev comment: with the refinement of Shadow Priest in recent weeks, Mindrender Illucia has been overperforming in the archetype in an unintended way. Instead of being used as a late game disruption tool, Shadow Priests have been using Illucia as early game play to essentially skip the opponent's turn. This change is aimed at removing that problematic gameplay from Illucia, while still keeping her in a similar space with her effect. It's just like, this is, in my opinion, how Illucia should have looked like from the beginning. We really don't have like a lot of matchups come down to. I think she's still a pretty decent disruption tool. I mean, she doesn't disrupt like per se. She does allow you to like do stuff with what your opponent has available in a similar fashion like before, which I think is way more in line what you do. It should come as no surprise to anyone that I am incredibly happy for this change. I've been advocating for Illucia deleted since it came out, and to finally actually get a look at this is it's pretty nice. As for if she ever sees play anymore, yeah, probably not. If Control Priest becomes a thing again, maybe play her, but I mean, that's a big maybe. She'll be like a better Voracious Reader. I don't think she's a better Voracious Reader. I think she's like worse, because Voracious Reader draws you into more threats and more efficient cards, whereas like Illucia against some decks, you're just gonna have the option to play like a bunch of removal spells or like combo pieces or like things that do not advance your own game plan while not tearing apart their game plan either. So she's way worse than Voracious Reader in that sort of way. I mean, yeah, you used to replace your hand with a copy of your opponent's until end of turn. Alright, then for the more... These are like the 2 changes that I mean, I didn't know how they would change Illucia, but I was... but I'm glad that it was like that it kind of killed the card, and I was very much expecting this one. But then we got into territory where I wasn't sure what would happen. Perpetual Flame. from 1 to 2 mana with the same effect. Dev comment. Perpetual Flame is a very efficient removal tool for questline Shaman. Going up 1 mana here will give board-based decks a better shot against Shaman in the early and mid game. And I guess we should cover the second Shaman nerf because we can't really discuss Perpetual Flame without having the full. Tame the Flames, which is the one that gives you Brukan, goes from 2 cards with Overload to get Brukan to 3 cards with Overload. And the dev comment is, slowing down the speed at which questline Shamans can get their final reward should open up more room for counterplay, particularly from slower strategies. Perpetual Flame 2 is something that I've the idea I've seen floating around, and I've always been suspicious of it. I might be in the wrong here. The strength of Perpetual Flame was never its efficient mana cost. I mean, it definitely played part in it. It definitely played part in it definitely makes the card a lot worse. I'll give it that, but it's just alone. In a lot of spots, I was very happy. I would be very happy to spend an extra mana on Perpetual. It makes it harder to have these really pop-off turns for your first quest reward. If you compare 2 mana Perpetual Flame versus changing maybe first quest reward to be 4 Overload cards or something like that, then I don't think that this is. I think this is way less impactful. I think that Quest Shaman dominates these matchups due to its first quest reward more so than Perpetual Flame. Nerfing Perpetual Flame is, my opinion, the same as nerfing. I'm not saying that Feral Spears is as good as Perpetual Flame, but you know, just nerfing a card up 1 mana, I have a hard time seeing it being super impactful. But that's why I'd like to talk about that. The second, maybe these 2 in combination, take down Quest Shaman enough in strength, because we also have to keep in mind that we later see Warlock nerfs, which was one of few decks that keeps Shaman in check. I will see how this plays out, but I'm also a little bit suspicious of the dev comment on Tame the Flames and how the phrasing it, their final reward should open up more room for counterplay, particularly from slower strategies. Slower strategies is pretty broad. I don't feel delaying the quest really. Slower strategies, if they're really slow, they really don't beat Brukan, no matter what. Is it to make it so that combo decks can go under Shaman? That would be the reasonable interpretation, in my opinion. To make it so that combo decks can be slower, or can be a little bit slower, and that Shaman just doesn't do their thing faster than the combo decks do. That would make sense to me. Or maybe it's fatigue lock now with the changes still have a shot against Shaman. That's how I look at it, at least. And it makes sense. I don't think that Shaman was powerful. They definitely needed to do something about it. I think they've been very light on the cards they could have nerfed, and that Shaman, they really, if you could nerf a class a lot and a little, this is very, very far on the we didn't want to nerf it much spectrum. I feel like both these nerfs are extremely, Shaman can overcome them. Next one over here. Ooh boy. The Demon Seed Warlock quest. Demon Seed, part 1 of the quest line. Old, take 6 damage on your turns. Reward, Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. New, take 8 damage on your turns. Reward, Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. Establish the link, part 2 of the quest line. Old, take 7 damage. New, take 8 damage. Additionally, the Demon Seed is now banned in Wild. Alright, sweet. I made a thumbs up here, but I guess I don't have cam on today, so lucky. But Wild players got what they want, I think, and I'm happy for them. As for standard, 8 damage. We don't have to speculate on how hard it is to take 8 damage, because we already know, because that's as much damage as you need for the final quest reward. We get Tabsid, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that 8 damage is a lot, especially when you come up against an aggressive deck. I mean, on the last quest reward for Tamsin, it's not we get life back. at its current state, and like now we will, which is sweet, I suppose. But like this is a big nerf. This is a very big nerf. That being said, I think that the card was probably way too powerful. So even if this taking a very big nerf, it might still be good. I do not think that Warlock is dead. I think that while I don't think Warlock will come out looking the same way that it is right now, because I think that with see, for example, what decks looked like when we had 8 mana Flesh Giant. Like, you could push the deck to such extremes in terms of like how greedy you could be with what cards you played. You didn't have to play, like, we didn't even play Mithril Rod because all of our shit was so efficient. Like, that should say a thing or two. So basically what these changes do is that I think that it pushes Warlock a lot more into having to be taken in a certain direction. And what I think, like, and to translate it into less fussy words, I think that means that we have to take Warlock into like more of a okay, well, some people are gonna try and cancel me over this, but more of a control deck direction. We see how Fatigue Lock currently is like we're playing Armor Vendor, some are playing Morgue Artificer to gain more life with their reward, and you don't play Flesh Giants, you don't really play Threats. I think those are the cards we're gonna need more of when our quest is slower. And all of a sudden, like, trying to turbo out Flesh Giants when it takes this much time to activate our quest, it just seems like way too ambitious of a strategy if they're like against any aggressive decks that I'd say that Questlock was already kind of struggling with, or like definitely had a bit of a weakness to if you look at like Shadow Priest. I'm still surprised to see that they did nothing to Soul Rend, but because I think that Soul Rend is a pretty easy card they could change to give Warlock a more distinct weakness. But it makes sense, because if you nerf Soul Rend, then you'd nerf the control style part, or like the slower part of Warlock, which seems to be what they are pushing instead. But if you nerfed Soul Rend and not the quest, then like maybe we'd see something more like a Threat Dance Flesh Giant. There were directions you could take this nerf, I think, as Warlock, and I think I approve of the direction they took. I think Warlock was still gonna be in the meta. I still think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna look a little bit different. I feel that if the quest rewards were 7, I would be very scared still. I mean, it is big because you can't go tap tap tap, but with Backfire in the mix, it just makes, if it's 7, then any draw with Backfire, the quest is gonna feel extremely similar to pre-nerf. So I think that 8 was the spot you needed to take it to. Oh, even slower and more removal and less threats. Yeah, you really try to be like, well, they're trying to give they're trying to give the players what they wanted. They were complaining about not having control decks. It's very much points to that they are trying to make Warlock the control deck. And fuck yes, I love control Warlock. Inject that into my veins. That's super fun to play. I mean, control is not control these days. It's like you play like 30 turns games. Definitely gonna be I think it's gonna be a deck that tries to remove your opponent's board while fatiguing yourself and kill with Tamsin. I didn't read dev comment. After monitoring both standard and wild since the release of Stormwind, we decided both increase damage required on the first 2 steps for standard and ban the questline in wild. In standard, we are slightly upping the amount of damage needed to complete the questline to slow down the speed at which Tamsin locks up games. In wild, where there are many more efficient self-damaging cards, the Demon Seed can be completed at an unintentionally fast rate. We are banning the card to protect the format from the problematic gameplay it created. When the Demon Seed wrote this to wild, we will embed it and reposition the card to be more appropriate for the format. Last card. Ruined Mithril Rod. Old cost 3, new cost 4. I just read that dev comment first. Ruined Mithril Rod is overperforming relative to mana generation sources in other classes, mainly due to Warlock's card draw potential. Going up 1 mana will bring Rude Mithril Rod's power level more in line with what other classes have access to. This was necessary. Rod on 3 was... I mean, the amount of mana this card cheats, and still cheats, is like fucked up. It's really messed up how much... I don't like the card because it gives me extremely heavy in counterflow vibes, which is... I know that with that, I mean more specifically that why I dislike playing against 2 mana in counterflow sometimes was that their deck got so efficient that like after an encounters flow that they just felt like nothing I did I could like get ahead through, because their cards were just so freaking efficient post flow that we were also in like a meta that were slower, and we just felt strangled by all the cost reduction that they amounted so quickly. And Ruined Mithril Rod has made me feel very similar. I just remember when I was playing Warlock for a little while without Rod, and my opponent was playing with Rod, and they got 1 activation off, and it was just like, there is nothing I can do, no matter like if I take the best lines or if my opponent slips up, they're just so naturally ahead that I cannot get back. Mithril Rod still provides that advantage, but in counterflow to 3 mana has made the card feel a lot less oppressive to play against. And I think that the Mithril Rod nerf is even bigger. Now it's natural, now how it works with backfire, which is probably like the main engine for Rod, just becomes incredibly awkward. Like it's the same thing that like now when someone plays flow on 3, you feel like you have been given enough time to like snowball an advantage. So like with an aggro deck, for example, you can really punish them from playing flow on 3. I feel like the same thing is going to happen with Rod now. That you do have a window to get under it, and that's a good thing. That being said, with like with the changes to the quest, will you still play it? I kind of wish I played a little bit more Warlock to be able to say for sure. Like if it's a control deck, then and like technically you should be able to afford to play this on 4 still, but I'm not super hopeful about Rod finding its way into future quest lock builds. But I'm not confident. I'm not confident. But my guess would be that it's not gonna see much play. So that's it for the nerfs. Overall, I mean, I am incredibly happy. I tweeted this picture. Most of you have probably seen it. Tweeted this like, sure, we got the Illucia nerfed, but also they nerfed a lot of my babies. Like I've been liking all of Warlock, Quest Shaman, Brute, Age. I don't think they killed anything except Illucia. Worried that the game will start to get too slow again. I love fast games. I love the speed that games have been lately. I know that this is a pretty controversial opinion, but not seeing turn 10, I love it. And not only because I have a short attention span, which I do, but also because I talked about it a little bit yesterday, which is I kind of need my hands to show this, and I don't have cam. But when a game is long, then it's, you know, it's like there's a lot. Just imagine like a long line, and there's so many decisions that like each decision really doesn't have too much meaning behind them, because there's just a million of them that you do. And like some might matter less than others, and some might not mean anything in the long term. But like when you make this like a very short line, and like each little decision, you have fewer decisions to make, but each decision you make, like you get more punished for every little mistake you do, because each individual decisions has higher impact on the game. That's what I like, and that's what I feel like the meta is right now. But with that being said, I don't think necessarily that this is how fast Hearthstone should be. I mean, and this is you can think what you want about it, but even I, that am probably the biggest advocate for having games be this quick, can probably be okay with the game slowing down a little bit, even though I personally would love the game to stay this way. But why I dislike balance patches in general, and why I feel like they make the game worse after, it's I like doing powerful things, and I really enjoyed 8 mana Flesh Giant. I really enjoyed 5 mana Skull Gul'dan, like back in Ashes. What else was there? Was just like utterly broken. Like all of these things, I loved when they just unnerfed everything for that balance patch that was before rotation. I love playing with broken cards. I think it's the most fun thing in all of Hearthstone. So anytime a balance patch hits and it like makes these like broken things I enjoy doing a little bit less broken, I get a little bit sad. That's why I'm happy that it didn't exactly kill things. What I hated about last rotation, whenever there were nerfs happening, was that we had like metas where it was like anytime balance changes did, the game reverted more and more back to Highlander meta. And like the biggest offender for the last year, I think, was Highlander Hunter, because just like the more nerfs happened, like they just made decks worse so that they couldn't beat Dino Tamer Bran anymore. And then you were playing this like dumb curve deck that just like had no decisions, just tried to hit your curve every like I think Highlander Hunter was one of the worst decks that have ever existed in Hearthstone. You can't change my mind. And I don't want to argue. This is just like my opinion. And so like, and going back to those metas, like after being able to do like cool things, like where it's just like, oh, they had Sephiroth on 2, Bran on 8, like Bran on 7. I just did not enjoy it. Like I thought that was really stupid, and that always happened. Like we always got closer and closer to that for each balance patch. I'm not too worried. I think they've been light on these changes. I think that most decks are still gonna be intact, and my hope is that we're still gonna see some powerful stuff happening. And I've loved this meta. I liked it before any changes to Flesh Giant or anything of that nature. I just think this has been like some of the most fun I've ever had playing Hearthstone in this meta. And I'm not so concerned that will cease being the case after this patch comes out. I think I realized it was like on stream like 2 days ago, that what I love about this meta, that I could queue decks, and that, like I've been queuing Garrote Rogue and OTK DH on ladder for like a long time now, and there is no matchup I hit where I'm like, oh fuck, I have to sit through this matchup. None. I've just been like happy with every single matchup. I've been like, oh, this is a fun, challenging experience. Like you sure, say what you will, getting like illusioned by Shadow Priest, that's probably like the most extreme, but at the end of the day, that's been extremely tolerable and even interesting, because the games are so short. Be like, oh, how do I maximize it to not get blown out by this one annoying thing they can do? We can go over the buffs too. The thing with the buffs though is that I think that, I mean, this whole patches, especially the buffs, I don't think are intended for right now. I don't think they are expecting Leatherworking Kit and Selective Breeder to like instantly be the best deck out of after the patch day. What I think they're doing though is that I think this is these buffs are mostly setups for the mini set that's about to come out. I don't know the date for the mini set. I suspect that it's actually... Did they confirm that it's the mini set was after the next Master Tour? I think so. I think it'll be late October. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think these are more set up to be post mini set. Maybe some of them are good now. I haven't really thought about it. But I have a hard time seeing... I'm not too worried. I think they've been light on these changes. I think that most decks are still gonna be intact. A little bit interested in these, but we can still go over them and talk about them. But just keep in mind, like while I talk about them, that that I'm not saying that you should instantly craft Beast Hunter like when the patch comes out, because we will probably still have to wait and see. Dev comments, we're looking at opening up a few more strategies for some of the less diverse classes and underrepresented archetypes in the standard metagame. These buffs are aimed at some of the weaker archetypes to make them more appealing options to play with. Some of these changes are at the lighter side in anticipation of Minaset coming in the next major patch after the patch launching Mercenaries. All right. Okay, they even say it themselves. So much for my analysis. I should have probably read this first. But I still want to talk about them. Leatherworking Kit going from 2 to 1 mana. I think this is the biggest buff out of the buffs, because I rated Leatherworking Kit high in the set review. I think Leatherworking Kit was a very good card at 2 mana. This feels like... oh man, I'm gonna get to eat these words at one point, but this feels like Crystology. The Crystology buff. Crystology was very, very, very good at 2 mana. And they just buffed it to 1 mana, and it was the best card in the freaking game. I'm not saying that Leatherworking Kit is gonna dream nightmares about Leatherworking Kit after the patch comes out, but I think that the reason we haven't seen Leatherworking Kit is not that strong enough. I think that it doesn't have the support. Like, a card can... this analogy is gonna get dumb, but Crystology wouldn't be a very powerful card if 1 power cards didn't exist either. You get my point. Like, these strong cards still need some help to be good. And that's why I tweeted actually that I think that Leatherworking Kit is going to be the nuts after the Mina set, because there's no way they buff 2 cards for the Beast archetype without having something really cool that's coming in the Mina set. I will give 100 subs to this channel if there aren't... I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're gonna be good, but if there are not gonna be like Beast Hunter enablers in the Mina set, like, it's a given at this point. And I don't think that... I think that Leatherworking Kit at 2 mana didn't need much help, and I think that Leatherworking Kit at 1 mana sounds downright oppressive. I'm not too worried. I think they've been light on these changes. I think that most decks are still gonna be intact. I like that it gives me a Netherspite Historian feels now. It's the same stat line as Netherspite Historian, the 1-free that discovered a dragon if you were holding 1. Are they increasing? Did they make it like a 1-free instead of a 2-2? Has me thinking that, like, if they wanted to push this archetype, wouldn't you want to make it like... Is it meant to be a slower archetype? A more like grindy archetype? Because if you wanted it to be like an aggressive beast deck, then you would probably made it like a 2-2 or a 3-2. But a 1-3 is like... Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's a very interesting stat line to give a hunter card. Does it sound like I'm smoking something here? Because maybe I'm just crazy, but my gears are turning on why did we give a hunter card a 1-free stat line when we changed it. All right, now to some spicy ones. Okay, I said that a reason of the quest line could change the whole meta. Dude, fucking the quest priest. I'm pretty sure it was intentionally made really bad, and I want it to be incredibly bad. I'm so happy to see, dude. They know that quest priest is not performing up to expectations. It were never supposed to perform up to up to any level. It's supposed to be like, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a bad quest, and it's gonna stay a bad quest. And thank God that it is. This is the one thing. This is the one thing. I predicted that Fire Mage would be what they would buff. I did not expect them to go and buff Hero Power Mage. I mean, sure, there's a fire spell, but my interest is peaked on Wildfire Mordresh after the patch comes out today. Wildfire going to 1 is just such a clean buff, because having to play Wildfire on 2 and then like on turn 3 you want to do Hero Power, like it's just the mana inefficiency. Ugh. It almost makes my like hair rise on my arm. Just it makes me feel so bad thinking of that curve. But if we instead go like just like clean turn 1 wildfire when the other players play their quest and then you start pinging on 2, that makes me feel a lot better. A huge buff to wildfire. It's not guaranteed to start in your opening hand like the quests are, but there's not a lot of cost to it. I think I was even playing wildfire in some iterations of not quest mage but spell mage when Lunacy was out, and I didn't think it was bad. And I think that wildfire is a huge buff, and I mean you can even look at it in a way that's like 1 mana 1 damage now, although you gotta use your powers. Pretty bad comparison, but huge buff to wildfire. But that's a card like where it's like the demon seed was already like very broken and like they could take it down a few notches. Wildfire was very bad and could definitely be taken up a few notches. So huge buff doesn't mean that it's gonna be great, but it was like in terms of power level for the card, it just went up. As for Mordresh, I think we've done 2 notches in mana, but we're not reducing the damage it deals. It's still just Pyroblast. The one maker buff. Oh, holy shit! Wait, that got my bears. Bears. That got my gears turning. What 1 mana spell are there? Mage. Brain Freeze, Devolving First Flame, Font Primordial, Shooting Star, Snap Freeze, and Wildfire. That's a pretty good 1 maker pool. A really good 1 maker pool. Snap Freeze is very, and some of these might not be at its best. In the Fonta Power can give you more Mordreshes, which is pretty. Oh, actually, Fonta Power should be good in the because you can get you more Reckless Apprentices as well. Can't say that these cards. I wish there was something that like reduced the cost of our hero power. That being said, like on the same token that I think that we're gonna get some beast support now in the Mina set, I think there's gonna be some support for this. I mean, Snap Freeze is decent. It's not as bad as it could be, but I mean, it's definitely like if you would point out a bad one, then it would be that. I might try this when the patch drops, because I kind of want to get a feeling of Mordresh and the Wildfire. They both got huge buffs to them, but we all know that Mage was also not, like Hero Power Mage was not nowhere close to getting there, so it probably still needs some help. Crazy how they are buffing a bunch of cards for the best quest of them all, as some smart person predicted. For those who don't remember, I predicted the Warrior quest to be the best quest of it in the quest lines, like probably slowly followed up by Warlock and Demon Hunter. So I was somewhat spot on, but then Warrior quest might have been a bit of a misprediction. Either way, I think all of these cards were pretty good to begin with. Stormwind Freebooter becomes Spider Tank with it's like SI7 agent Spider Tank. 3/4 deal 2 on Battlecry, and is a pirate for quest, and cursed with Harbor Scamp, the 2/2 that draws a pirate. I was already liking this card, but like this card just got really good. Stormwell Anchorman, honestly, I don't really care. I don't know. But buffing 1 tough, this is still just like a very much a 5 mana clunky card. It's nice because it's one of the few ways that Warrior has to draw cards. So I think it's a necessary evil. I was playing Rush Warrior with Saurfang at some point, and I like the consistency that Stormwell Anchorman gave to my deck, but it was in a way weaker meta, and I mean, it seems like a slight quality of life improvement. There could always be some card in the Mina set that makes Stormwell Anchorman just become like a powerhouse If there's this is an incredibly real 1-drop all of a sudden, especially with the first part of the quest being draw a weapon, which means that, I mean, the awkward thing is this a 1-drop, and you usually want to play quest on 1, so generally you're gonna play this on 2, which sucks, but that's also even more reason why you need to debuff its stats. But like, you're gonna get a weapon consistently, which means that this effect is gonna be good consistently. For Quest Warrior, there's also another pirate that I think is super strong, that not a lot of my peers seem to share the opinion on, but that would be Cargo Guard. I think Cargo Guard is super strong and one of the best anti-aggro tools we had in a long time, but it's not really getting the love it deserves because well, Warrior is pretty out of the meta. So it's good matchups. Yeah, isn't the meta gonna be... I feel like the meta is gonna be quite aggressive post. Oh, I can do meta predictions first. Aggro decks got a huge buff. They pretty much try to make all of the nerfs, I mean, except Illucia, but all the other nerfs are very directly geared towards giving aggro more room to combat the combo and quest decks, which it was already something I think they were pretty good at. I wasn't brooding all my aggro opponents early enough. Like, Shaman is still probably gonna be good against aggro, but like Warlock, unless it adapts like fully, could be weak. I think that the meta is gonna be something along the lines of, I mean, like, I don't think that any of these decks die, except maybe Shadow Priest. Like Hunter should go up slightly in value. Aggro Druid, I'm not so sure about. I already thought that deck was pretty questionable. The thing with the Quest Mages is just like 2 of its best matchups getting nerfed, right? But if Quest Shaman doesn't get hurt much, then like Mage is definitely like definitely got stronger against Warlock, but it was already pretty decent there. But it still loses just as hard to the aggro decks, right? And I think that aggro is gonna be better. LDH gets better. But those LDH really bad matchups to like even to begin with. I don't know why LDH fell out of favor. LDH was oh yeah, it was better versus Lock. I was banning Lock in the MT. Would LDH be it the slower locks? Like if they cut Flesh Giant, it would, right? Try to create a post-patch Fire Mage deck? Not right now. Not right now. LDH got better for sure, I think. I think aggro decks, I think Shadow Priest might still be very good. Just cut Illucia. I think Illucia was a great tool for that deck, but I think the deck was powerful even without Illucia. Like, even without Illucia, I think if someone told me, look, I don't have the dust to craft Illucia, can I still play Shadow Priest? I'd say, yes, you can. Meta predictions, aggro got better. Warlock is gonna look very different. The more I think about it, I'm kinda not seeing this space for DH post nerf, even though I don't think that this is killing Brute. It definitely not killing Brute, I don't think. But I think that it could be hard for Demon Hunter, like for Brute Demon Hunter to stack up. Like when I think of the next meta and like how that deck will stack up, it doesn't sound super promising. But that's just my gut feeling. I don't have any super solid logic to back it up. Shadow Priest, I still think is going to be super good, but not as toxic. Quest Shaman probably got better overall, but even though it took 2 nerfs, and Warlock is gonna look very different, very, very different, as in like it becomes a control slow deck, and it has a way more. It's not gonna be as like current Warlocks can kinda beat everything. I think that the next Warlocks are gonna be like has to have a niche, like, oh, I'm trying to beat this or I'm trying to beat that. The buffs I don't see being very impactful until the mini set comes out. but I might try to go ping me dude deck a little bit. Interesting bugs they fix. Fix up where tradable cards would keep enchantments if shuffled into your deck by something other than tradable. That's a big one, right? For the DH deck. Oh, they fixed the Baron Scavenger. That could be reduced to 0. That's big too. And the other things just don't seem super relevant, right? Yeah. I don't know. I like this patch. I like this patch. They are certainly my babies are taking a big hit, but Illucia is dead, and I am not scared that I won't enjoy the game post patch.